You know that feeling when your heart's beating so loud you think the whole world can hear it? When your lungs burn like you've swallowed fire, and your legs want to give up but you keep running anyway because stopping means dying? That's where Lyria was right now. The forest stretched out before her like a frozen nightmare, all twisted black trees and sharp white snow that cut through the darkness like shattered glass. Every breath she took hurt. The cold air stabbed her throat like tiny knives, and when she breathed out, white clouds puffed from her mouth and disappeared into the night. Her feet were bare, completely bare against the snow. Can you imagine that? Running through ice and rocks with nothing protecting your skin? Each step sent lightning bolts of pain shooting up her legs, but she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Behind her, the howls were getting closer. The moon should have been her friend tonight. The moon was supposed to watch over wolves, supposed to guide them, supposed to protect them. But even the moon had abandoned her. It hid behind thick gray clouds like it was ashamed to look at her, like everyone else in her pack had been ashamed. Barren Omega. That's what they called her, those 2 words that followed her everywhere like a shadow she couldn't shake off. 2 words that meant she wasn't good enough, wasn't complete, wasn't worthy of being part of the family she'd known her whole life. A branch whipped across her face, and she tasted blood, her own blood, mixing with the metallic taste of fear already coating her tongue. She wanted to cry, but crying meant slowing down, and slowing down meant they would catch her. Her side burned, not just from running from the wound that was still bleeding, soaking through the thin dress that was all they'd left her with when they threw her out. The fabric stuck to her skin, wet and cold and heavy. She pressed her hand against it as she ran, feeling the warm blood seep between her fingers. Another howl split the night. Closer now, so much closer. These weren't strangers chasing her. That's what made it worse. These were wolves she'd grown up with, wolves she'd played with as a child, wolves she'd shared meals with, laughed with, trained with. Now they hunted her like she was a rabbit, like she was nothing. Because to them, she was nothing. Lyria's foot caught on a root hidden beneath the snow, and suddenly the ground rushed up to meet her. She crashed down hard, her knees slamming into the frozen earth. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and immediate and overwhelming. For a second, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The howls erupted again, triumphant this time. They knew she'd fallen. They could probably smell her blood on the wind, mixed with her fear sweat and the desperation pouring off her in waves. She pushed herself up on trembling arms. Her whole body shook from cold, from exhaustion, from the terror that wrapped around her chest like iron chains. Her vision blurred, and she didn't know if it was from tears or from hitting her head when she fell. "Please," she whispered to the uncaring forest. "Please." But who was she begging? The trees didn't care. The snow didn't care. The moon hiding behind its clouds definitely didn't care. And the wolves behind her, the ones who used to be her family, they cared least of all. Something stirred inside her chest. Something warm. It felt like a tiny flame trying to light itself in the middle of a blizzard. Lyria gasped and looked down at her hands. They were glowing. Not bright, just a faint silver shimmer, like moonlight trapped beneath her skin. The light pulsed with her heartbeat, getting a little brighter with each terrified thump of her heart. It spread across her palms, warming them against the brutal cold. She'd felt this before. 3 times in her life, this strange warmth had tried to surface. Once when she was 10 and the older wolves had cornered her, calling her useless. Once when she was 14 and she'd discovered she couldn't bear children like other Omegas could. And once last month when the Alpha had announced she was being cast out. Each time it had scared her. Each time she'd pushed it down, buried it deep, pretended it wasn't there. Because whatever this power was, it made her different. And different was dangerous when you were already at the bottom of the pack. But now, kneeling in the snow with her former family closing in for the kill, being different didn't seem so scary anymore. Being dead, that was scary. Lyria tried to focus on the warmth, tried to make it grow, tried to understand what it wanted from her. The silver glow spread up her wrists, painting her arms with that strange, gentle light. It felt like something inside her was waking up after sleeping for her entire life. Like a part of her she'd never known existed was finally opening its eyes. "Come on," she thought desperately. "Whatever you are, please help me, please." But the power flickered like a candle in the wind. It danced across her skin for another heartbeat, then faded away completely, leaving her hands cold and normal and absolutely useless. A sob tore from her throat. Even this mysterious power didn't want her. Even this abandoned her when she needed it most. The sound of paws hitting snow echoed through the trees. Multiple wolves, moving fast, spreading out to surround her. They were hunting as a pack, coordinated, efficient, deadly. Everything she'd been taught, now being used against her. Lyria forced herself to stand. Her legs screamed in protest, but she ignored them. She'd been ignoring pain her whole life. What was a little more now? The forest pressed in around her, dark and suffocating. Every shadow could be hiding a wolf. Every sound could be claws on ice or teeth clicking together in anticipation. The wind picked up, throwing snow in her face, making it even harder to see where she was going. She didn't have a plan, didn't have a destination, didn't have anything except the desperate animal instinct to run, survive, keep moving. Don't stop. Don't let them catch you. Her breath came in ragged gasps now. Each inhale felt like swallowing broken glass. Each exhale left her with less air than she needed. Her body was shutting down, giving up, reaching its limits. But her mind, her stubborn, fierce, refusing to quit, mind kept her feet moving. This wasn't how her story was supposed to go. She was supposed to have a family. She was supposed to belong somewhere. She was supposed to matter to someone. Instead, she was alone in a frozen forest, bleeding and broken, with the only family she'd ever known trying to tear her apart. The injustice of it burned hotter than any wound. A wolf burst from the trees to her left, a massive gray male she recognized instantly. Kale. He'd been kind to her once, years ago, before she'd failed her first heat and everyone realized she was barren. Now his eyes held nothing but cold determination as he angled toward her. Lyria changed direction, pushing her screaming legs harder. A fallen log blocked her path and she jumped, barely clearing it, landing badly on the other side, her ankle twisting with a sickening pop. Fresh pain joined the symphony of agony already playing through her body. She bit down on her scream, swallowed it, kept running with a limp now. Showing weakness would only make them more excited. Predators loved prey that was wounded. More wolves appeared, flanking her on all sides. She counted at least 5 now, maybe more hiding in the darkness. They weren't even trying to catch her, yet they were toying with her, driving her, exhausting her, making sure she had no escape before they moved in for the kill. The Alpha's orders had been clear. Make sure she never comes back. Those were his exact words as he'd stood before the entire pack and cast her out. No trial, no chance to defend herself. Just judgment, swift and final, for the crime of being born wrong. Tears froze on Lyria's cheeks. She was so tired, so incredibly, bone-deep tired. Her body wanted to quit, her heart wanted to give up. It would be easier to just stop running, to let it end, to finally rest. But something deep inside her, that same place where the silver warmth lived, whispered, "Not yet." She stumbled again, caught herself against a tree. The bark scraped her palm raw, but she didn't care. She pushed off, kept moving, refused to surrender, even though every logical part of her brain was screaming that this was hopeless. The howls surrounded her now, coming from every direction. The circle was tightening. The hunt was ending. Soon they would close in, and it would be over. Lyria's foot hit a patch of ice hidden under the snow. Her legs flew out from under her and suddenly she was falling, not just tripping this time but really falling, tumbling down a slope she hadn't seen in the darkness. She crashed through bushes and bounced off rocks, the world spinning in a chaos of white and black and pain. She hit the bottom hard, all the air exploding from her lungs. For several horrible seconds, she couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but lie there like a broken doll tossed aside by a careless child. Above her, on the ridge she'd fallen from, glowing eyes appeared. 1 pair, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The whole hunting party, standing in a line, looking down at their cornered prey. Lyria rolled onto her back, staring up at them. Her chest heaved as she tried to force air into her lungs. Blood dripped from a dozen cuts covering her body. Her ankle throbbed, her side screamed, her head spun. This was it. The end of her story. The Barren Omega, who couldn't even die with dignity, just hunted down and torn apart in the snow like worthless garbage. But as she lay there, something strange happened. That warmth stirred again in her chest, stronger this time, almost angry. Her hands began to glow, brighter than before, the silver light pushing back the darkness around her. It spread up her arms, across her chest, down her legs, until her whole body shimmered with that impossible moonlit glow. The wolves on the ridge stepped back, uncertain now. This wasn't normal. This wasn't what they expected. Omegas didn't glow. Omegas didn't have power. Omegas, especially barren ones, were weak. But Lyria wasn't weak anymore. Or maybe she'd never been weak and just didn't know it. Maybe all those years of being called useless and worthless and broken had just buried something incredible that was finally clawing its way to the surface. The light grew brighter, warmer, more intense. It didn't hurt. Instead, it felt like coming home after being lost for her entire life, like finding a piece of herself she didn't know was missing. And as the wolves began their descent, as they rushed toward her for the final attack, Lyria threw back her head and screamed, not in fear this time, but in defiance. The silver light exploded outward like a shockwave, turning the night into day for one perfect, impossible moment. The force of it threw the attacking wolves backward, sent them tumbling, bought her precious seconds she desperately needed. Lyria didn't understand what was happening. Didn't understand this power, or where it came from, or what it meant. But she understood one thing with crystal clarity. She was done running. She pushed herself to her feet, standing tall despite her wounds, despite her exhaustion, despite everything that said she should be dead already. The silver light continued to pulse around her, responding to her emotions, feeding off her determination. The wolves circled wary now, keeping their distance. They'd come to hunt a helpless Omega. What they'd found was something else entirely, something unknown and therefore dangerous. One wolf, Kyle, took a cautious step forward. His eyes met hers, and for just a moment she saw something in them. Doubt, maybe, or fear, or perhaps even the tiniest flicker of respect. "Stay back!" Lyria's voice came out stronger than she expected, carrying across the clearing with an authority she'd never possessed before. "All of you, just stay back." And in that frozen moment, with power she didn't understand crackling around her like lightning, with blood staining the snow beneath her feet, with her former pack watching in confusion and uncertainty, Lyria made a choice. She would survive this night. She would survive what came after. She would find out what this power meant and where it came from. She would become something more than the barren Omega they'd thrown away. She would become whoever she was meant to be, even if she had to do it completely alone. The silver light flared one more time, bright enough to blind, and when it faded, Lyria was already moving. Not running away this time, but running forward toward her future, whatever that might hold. Behind her, the wolves howled again, but this time the sound was different. This time, it wasn't the howl of predators closing in for a kill. This time, it sounded almost like a warning to each other, a recognition that something had changed, that the prey had transformed into something unpredictable and possibly more dangerous than any of them realized. And Lyria? She kept running through that frozen forest, her bare feet leaving glowing silver footprints in the snow that faded slowly behind her like the ghost of who she used to be, making way for whoever she was becoming. Before we dive deeper into Lyria's journey of survival and discovery, take a moment, breathe with her, feel her fear turning into fierce determination. And if you're new here and this story grabbed you by the heart, Subscribe to Crimson Moon by Benny, where broken wolves don't just survive, they rise as warriors. Because Lyria's transformation has only just begun, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when she finally embraces the power sleeping inside her soul. The footprints behind Lyria still glowed silver when she heard it, the sound that made every wolf in the northern realms freeze in terror. A growl so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself, shaking the snow from the trees and silencing every living thing in the forest. She spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. The hunting pack had stopped dead in their tracks, their confident pursuit turning into something else. Something that looked a lot like fear. A shadow moved between her and the wolves. Not just any shadow, this one seemed to drink in the moonlight, making the darkness around it even darker. Then the shadow stepped forward and became a man. No, not just a man, an alpha. He was tall, so tall Lyria had to tilt her head back to see his face. His shoulders were broad enough to block out the world behind him, and he moved like violence wrapped in control, like a storm that was choosing not to destroy you yet. His hair was black as midnight, falling just past his collar, and his skin seemed to glow with an inner heat that made the winter air around him steam. But his eyes, his eyes were what made her breath catch in her throat. They burned gold, not the normal amber of wolf eyes, but true molten gold, like someone had trapped the sun itself behind his pupils. Those eyes found her through the darkness, pinned her in place, saw through her in a way that made her feel completely naked, even though she was still wearing her torn dress. Lyria, of the Silver Hollow Pack. His voice rolled across the clearing like thunder before a storm. "I've been searching for you." She flinched. Actually flinched, stepping back even though her body screamed at her to stay still, to not show weakness. How did he know her name? How did he know which pack she came from? More importantly, why had someone this powerful been searching for her? The hunting wolves stood frozen, caught between their orders to kill her and their instinct to run from this newcomer. KL, her former packmate, was shaking now, his ears flat against his head, his tail tucked between his legs. The others looked no better. The tall alpha didn't even look at them. His burning gold eyes stayed locked on Lyria, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Then, almost casually, he turned his head toward the hunting pack. "Leave!" One word, that's all it took. The wolves hesitated for only a heartbeat before they scattered. They didn't argue, didn't challenge, didn't even look back. They just ran, proud warriors turning into frightened puppies at the sound of his voice. Within seconds, Lyria was alone in the clearing with this terrifying stranger. Well, not completely alone. She could still hear her hunters crashing through the forest, getting as far away as possible, their howls of retreat echoing through the trees. The silver glow around Lyria flickered and died, leaving her feeling suddenly vulnerable and very, very small. Her legs shook from exhaustion, from fear, from the overwhelming impossibility of everything that had just happened. She swayed on her feet. He moved so fast she didn't see it coming. 1 second he was 10 feet away, the next his hand was on her elbow, steadying her. His touch burned through the thin fabric of her dress, hot as fire but somehow not painful, just intense, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. "Don't touch me," she whispered, but even she could hear how weak her protest sounded. He didn't let go. Didn't hurt her either. Just held her steady, while her world tilted sideways and her vision swam with black spots. "You're injured," he said, and this time his voice was softer. Still powerful, still commanding, but with an edge of something that might have been concern. "And you're freezing. When did you last eat?" Lyria tried to remember. Yesterday? The day before? Time had become meaningless since they'd thrown her out. I can't. Her knees buckled. She felt herself falling and braced for the impact with the frozen ground. But instead of cold earth, she felt warmth. He'd caught her, scooped her up like she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against his chest. His body was so hot it felt like pressing against a furnace, And despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the absolute terror of not knowing what was happening, her freezing body melted into that heat. "Who are you?" she managed to ask, fighting to keep her eyes open. "Why were you searching for me?" "My name is KL," he said, and that's when Lyria realized something that made her heart stop. KL, Alpha King KL, the most feared alpha in all the Northern Realms. The one who ruled not just one pack but dozens. The one other alphas whispered about in fearful voices. The one who was supposed to be half legend, half nightmare. And he was carrying her through the forest like she was something precious instead of the worthless Barren Omega everyone else saw. "You're going to kill me," she whispered. It wasn't a question. Powerful alphas didn't search for broken omegas unless they wanted to eliminate a problem. "No," he said it simply, with absolute certainty, like the idea hadn't even crossed his mind. "I'm going to keep you alive." She wanted to ask why, wanted to demand answers, wanted to understand how her night had gone from being hunted by her own pack to being rescued by the most dangerous alpha alive. But her body had other plans. The adrenaline that had kept her running, fighting, surviving, it was draining away now, leaving nothing behind but pain and exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. Her eyes closed. She felt him adjust his hold on her, felt his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek, felt the rhythm of his footsteps as he carried her somewhere. Where? She didn't know. Didn't have the strength to care. Just before darkness took her completely, she heard him murmur something that made no sense at all. "I found you. Finally. After all these years. I found you." When Lyria woke, the first thing she noticed was warmth. Real warmth, not the desperate heat of running for your life or the feverish burn of wounds going bad. This was soft warmth, gentle warmth, the kind that seeped into your bones and made you forget that cold existed. She was lying on something impossibly soft. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking against firelight that danced across stone walls. A cave. She was in a cave, lying on furs that must have cost more than her entire pack's wealth, covered with a blanket so thick and luxurious she couldn't even imagine where it came from. "You're awake." Lyria's head snapped toward the voice. Alpha King Kale sat across the fire from her, his golden eyes catching the flames and making them look even more inhuman. He'd been watching her sleep. How long had he been sitting there, just watching? She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in her body screamed. Her wounds had been cleaned and bandaged. She could feel fresh wrappings around her ribs and see clean white cloth peeking out from under the loose shirt someone had dressed her in. His shirt. She was wearing his shirt. "Where are my clothes?" The words came out sharper than she intended. Being cleaned. They were soaked with blood. He gestured to a bowl beside her. "You should eat. You haven't had food in days." He was right. The smell of stew made her stomach clench with desperate hunger. But Lyria had learned long ago that nothing came free. "What do you want from me?" Kale studied her for a long moment. The firelight played across his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the strong line of his nose, the fullness of his lips. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a sword fresh from the forge, stunning but deadly. "You don't remember me," he finally said. It wasn't a question. "Should I?" "We met once, 15 years ago. You were just a child, 5 years old, maybe 6. Your pack had come to the great gathering." He leaned forward, his eyes never leaving her face. "You wandered away from your parents and got lost in the forest. I found you crying by the river." Lyria's breath caught. She did remember that. Sort of. The memory was hazy, like looking through fog, but she remembered being terrified and lost, and then a boy, a teenager with kind eyes, had found her and brought her back to safety. Her mother had cried with relief. Her father had thanked the boy over and over. "That was you?" she whispered. "You looked at me," Kale continued, his voice dropping lower, becoming almost vulnerable, "and you said, 'Don't be sad. The moon loves you.' Do you remember that?" She didn't, but goosebumps rose on her arms anyway. "I asked you what you meant, and you touched my chest right here." He pressed his hand over his heart, "And you said, I can see it. The moon put her light in you. You're special. Then you smiled at me like I'd just given you the greatest gift in the world, and you ran back to your parents. I don't understand, Lyria said. Why would that make you search for me? Because 3 days later, during the full moon ceremony, I received my Alpha King marks. At 16 years old, the youngest Alpha King in 5 generations. His eyes blazed brighter. You knew. Somehow, you saw something in me that no one else could see. Not my father, not the pack healers, not even the moon priestess. A 5-year-old child looked at me and knew. The weight of his stare pressed down on her. So you've been, what? Looking for me ever since? That doesn't make sense, doesn't it? He stood up, and even though he moved slowly, carefully, like he was trying not to spook her, his presence filled the entire cave. Tell me, Lyria of Silver Hollow, when did your power first show itself? Her hands clenched in the furs. I don't know what you're talking about. The silver light. The glow that saved you from your hunters. The power that made seasoned warriors back away in fear. He moved closer, crouching down so they were eye to eye. That power. When did it first appear? She wanted to lie. Wanted to deny everything. But those gold eyes saw through her like she was made of glass. 10 years old, she admitted quietly. The first time, and your pack called you Barren when you were 14. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. The shame of it still burned, even now. They were wrong! Kale said it with such absolute certainty that Lyria almost laughed. Almost. They tested me, multiple times. The healers, the elders, even the moon priestess. They all agreed I can't bear children. I'm broken. You're not broken. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek. His hand was warm and rough and impossibly gentle. You're carrying something else. Something more important than they could possibly understand. Stop talking in riddles, she snapped, jerking away from his touch even though part of her wanted to lean into it. If you know something, just say it. Kael stood again, pacing to the cave entrance. Outside, she could see that night had fully fallen, and snow was still falling in thick white sheets. There's a place I need to take you. An ancient site. You'll get your answers there. No! The word burst out of her before she could stop it. No more mysteries. No more strangers making decisions for me. I don't even know you. For all I know, you're worse than the pack that tried to kill me. He turned back to her, and for the first time, she saw something crack in his controlled expression. Pain flickered across his face, there and gone in a heartbeat. I would never hurt you, Lyria. I would burn down the entire world before I let anyone hurt you. The intensity in his voice made her shiver. This wasn't the declaration of a kind stranger. This was something deeper, something that scared her because she didn't understand it. Why? She whispered. Why do you care what happens to me? Alpha King Kale looked at her across the firelit cave, his golden eyes holding secrets that might swallow her whole, and said the words that would change everything. Because 15 years ago, a child touched my chest and showed me I was meant for something greater. And 3 months ago, the same moon that gave me my power sent me a dream over and over, every single night. In that dream, a woman with silver light surrounding her stands in a sacred grove, and the entire world bends to her will. He took a breath. That woman was you, Lyria. It's always been you. The words hung in the air between them like smoke, impossible to ignore and even more impossible to believe. Lyria's mind spun, trying to make sense of what Kale had just said. Dreams, prophecies. A woman with silver light who could bend the world to her will. You're insane, she whispered, but her voice shook. I can barely control whatever this is inside me. I'm not. I can't be what you think I am. Kael moved back to the fire, settling down across from her again. But this time there was something different in his posture, less guarded, more vulnerable. When I was 16 and received these marks, he pulled back his sleeve, revealing intricate silver symbols that wound around his forearm like living vines. Everyone told me I was blessed, chosen, special. His voice turned bitter. They didn't tell me about the weight, the impossible expectations, the loneliness of being something no one else can understand. Lyria found herself leaning forward, drawn into his story despite her fear. My own father tried to control me. My pack elders wanted to use me as a weapon. Other alphas either wanted to kill me or bind me to their families through forced matings. He looked up at her, and the pain in those golden eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. I've spent 15 years being what everyone else needed me to be, never once being allowed to just exist. Why are you telling me this? She asked softly. Because you understand. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You've been called broken for something you can't control, punished for being different, cast out for not fitting into the neat little box they built for you. His eyes found hers across the flames. We're the same, you and I, both carrying power we don't fully understand, both hunted by the people who should have protected us. Something in Lyria's chest cracked open, not painfully, but like a door that had been locked for years, suddenly swinging wide. No one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever looked at her and seen anything except her failures. I'm scared, she admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Of this power, of what it means, of what people will do when they find out. I know, Kale's voice wrapped around her like a blanket, but you don't have to be scared alone anymore. The fire crackled between them, sending sparks spiraling up toward the cave ceiling. Outside, the wind howled, but in here, it was warm and quiet and almost safe. When was the last time Lyria had felt safe? The place you mentioned, she said carefully. The sacred site. What's there? Answers. Maybe. He ran a hand through his dark hair, making it stand up in messy spikes. The moon priestess who trained me told me about it once. She said there are places in this world where the veil between our reality and the moon's realm grows thin, where those with true power can hear the voice of the goddess herself. He paused. If anywhere can tell us what you are, what this silver light means, it's there. Lyria looked down at her hands, remembering how they'd glowed, how the power had felt both terrifying and right. When do we leave? You'll come? He sounded surprised, almost hopeful. I need answers more than I need safety right now. She met his eyes. But if you try to hurt me, or trap me, or control me like everyone else has, I won't. The promise in his voice was absolute. I swear it on my alpha marks, on my life, on everything I am. You are not my prisoner, Lyria. You're free to leave whenever you choose. Something warm bloomed in her chest, not the silver power, but something else. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. We'll leave at dawn, Kale said, standing and moving to the cave entrance. Try to rest. You're still healing. But Lyria couldn't rest. Her mind raced with everything that had happened, everything she'd learned, everything she still didn't understand. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and stared into the fire, watching the flames dance and shift. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Outside, the storm began to calm, the wind dying down to a whisper. Kael had positioned himself at the cave entrance like a guard, his broad back to her, keeping watch while she supposedly slept. But she wasn't sleeping, and after a while she realized he wasn't either. His shoulders were too tense, his breathing too controlled. Kael? Her voice was quiet in the darkness. He turned slightly. You should rest. Can't. She shifted, wincing as her wounds protested. Will you tell me about the dream? The one the moon sent you? He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved back into the cave, settling on the furs a few feet away from her, close enough to talk quietly, far enough to not crowd her. It always starts the same way, he began, his voice low and almost hypnotic. I'm standing in a grove I've never seen before. Ancient trees surround me, their branches so thick they block out the sky. But there's light anyway. Silver light, coming from the center of the grove. Lyria found herself drawn into his words, seeing what he described like it was happening right in front of her. And there you are, standing in that light like you were born from it. Your hair moves even though there's no wind. Your eyes, he paused, they're glowing the same silver as your power. And around you, the forest is alive. Not just living, but aware, conscious, bowing to you like you're their queen. Her breath caught. What happens then? You turn and look at me, and every single time, no matter how many times I've had this dream, your expression breaks my heart. His voice roughened. Because you look so sad, so unbearably sad, like you're carrying the weight of the entire world and you don't think you're strong enough to hold it. Tears pricked at Lyria's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. And then you speak, the same words every time. Find me before they do, please. Kale's golden eyes found hers in the firelight. That's when I wake up. Every night for 3 months. The same dream. The same desperate plea. Until I couldn't ignore it anymore. So you came looking for me. I searched every pack in the northern realms, asked about omegas with unusual power, with silver light, with anything that might match what I saw. Most packs laughed at me. Some tried to offer me their daughters thinking I was looking for a mate. He smiled bitterly. And then, 2 days ago, I heard a rumor. A pack at the edge of the realm had cast out their omega, called her cursed, said she had dangerous power they couldn't control. I knew immediately it was you. Lyria tried to process this. All of it. The dreams, the search, the absolute conviction in his voice that she was someone important. It was too much, too overwhelming, too impossible. I'm nobody, she said quietly, just a broken omega who... Stop! Kale's voice was sharp enough to cut. Stop calling yourself broken. Stop repeating the lies they told you. He moved closer, and this time she didn't pull away. You are not broken, Lyria. You are not cursed. You are not worthless. Whatever you are, whatever this power means, it's something extraordinary. Something that scares them because they can't control it. But what if they're right? The words burst out of her, all the fear and doubt she'd been holding back flooding out at once. What if I am dangerous? What if this power inside me hurts someone? What if... Day. Then we'll figure it out together. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to refuse. When she didn't move away, he took her hand. His palm was warm and rough with calluses, completely engulfing her smaller hand. You don't have to face this alone anymore. I meant what I said. I would burn down the world before I let anyone hurt you. That includes letting you hurt yourself with their lies. Something inside Lyria shattered all the walls she'd built, all the armor she'd worn, all the lies she'd told herself about being worthless. A sob broke from her throat, then another, and suddenly she was crying. Really crying, not the silent tears she'd shed while running for her life, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place so wounded she hadn't even known it existed. Kale didn't tell her to stop, didn't tell her to be strong. He just held her hand and let her break apart, his presence steady and solid and safe. When the tears finally slowed, when her breathing evened out, when she felt emptied and exhausted and somehow lighter, she realized she'd moved closer to him. Her head was almost resting on his shoulder, their hands still clasped between them. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gentle back-and-forth motion that sent shivers up her arm. You've been running and fighting and surviving without a single moment to just feel. You're allowed to break down. You're not what I expected, she admitted. When they told stories about the Alpha King, they made you sound like a monster. I can be. His voice went dark. When someone threatens what's mine, when someone hurts the innocent, when someone breaks the laws I've sworn to uphold, yes, I can be monstrous. He looked down at her, his golden eyes soft in a way she suspected very few people ever saw. But not with you. Never with you. The intimacy of the moment pressed down on them, thick and heavy and charged with something Lyria didn't have words for. She was suddenly very aware of how close they were, how she could feel the heat radiating from his body, how his scent pine and smoke and something wild wrapped around her like a physical thing. We should sleep, Kale said. But he didn't move away. Dawn will come quickly. I don't think I can sleep yet. Her heart was beating too fast, her mind too full of everything that had happened, everything that might happen tomorrow. Then I'll stay awake with you. He settled back against the cave wall, pulling her gently with him so she was tucked against his side. It should have felt wrong, she barely knew him, and what she did know was terrifying. But instead it felt right in a way nothing else in her life ever had. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers, listening to the last whispers of the storm outside dying away. Lyria felt her eyelids growing heavy despite her earlier claim. The warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the safety of being held, it all conspired to pull her toward sleep. Just before she drifted off, she felt his lips brush against her hair, so soft she might have imagined it. And she heard him whisper words that wrapped around her heart and squeezed, I see you, Lyria. All of you, even the parts you hide, especially those parts. And you are magnificent. She wanted to tell him he was wrong. Wanted to argue, to protest, to list all the ways she was anything but magnificent. But exhaustion won, dragging her down into sleep, and for the first time in years, her dreams were peaceful. When dawn came, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they would leave. They would travel to this sacred grove. They would search for answers about her power, about the dreams, about why a 5-year-old child had once seen greatness in a teenage boy. But for now, in this quiet cave, with the fire burning low and the Alpha King's arms wrapped protectively around her, Lyria let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe, possibly, impossibly, she might actually be worth saving after all. Dawn broke cold and clear, painting the world in shades of fire and ice. Lyria woke slowly, awareness returning in gentle waves. Warmth surrounded her. Kale's arms still held her close, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of sleep. For just a moment, she let herself stay there, feeling safer than she had in her entire life. Then, reality crashed back in. The sacred grove, the answers waiting there, the terrifying possibility that she might be something more than the worthless Omega everyone had called her. She shifted. And immediately Kale's eyes opened, those burning gold eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. Morning, he said softly, his voice rough with sleep in a way that made her stomach flip. We should go. She pulled away, suddenly aware of how intimate their position was, how her body had curved into his during the night, how right it had felt. They prepared quickly and quietly. Kale found her boots cleaned and dried by the fire and helped her lace them up when her still healing wounds made bending difficult. He'd packed supplies while she slept. Food, water, clean bandages, and a thick, fur-lined cloak that he draped around her shoulders. How far is it? She asked as they stepped out of the cave into the crisp morning air. Half a day's journey, maybe less if we move quickly. He glanced at her, concern flickering across his face. But we go at your pace, your wounds. I'm fine. She wasn't, but they didn't have time for her to be weak. Something in her gut told her they needed to reach the grove soon, very soon. They walked in silence through the forest, following paths that seemed to exist only in Kale's mind. The snow had stopped falling, leaving everything covered in a pristine white blanket that crunched softly under their feet. Birds sang in the branches above, and somewhere in the distance, a stream babbled over rocks. It should have been peaceful, beautiful even. But Lyria couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, following them, waiting. Kale, she said quietly. Do you feel that? He'd already moved closer to her, his body positioned protectively. We're being tracked, have been since we left the cave. Fear spiked through her. My old pack? No, something else. His eyes scanned the trees, alert and predatory. Something that's trying very hard to stay hidden. They walked faster, not quite running but close. The forest grew denser, the trees older and more gnarled, their branches reaching toward each other like skeletal fingers. The air changed too, becoming thicker, heavier, charged with an energy that made Lyria's skin prickle. We're getting close, Kale murmured. "The grove is just ahead." That's when Lyria saw it. Through a break in the trees, a clearing opened up, but this wasn't like any forest clearing she'd ever seen. The trees surrounding it were ancient beyond measure, their trunks wider than 3 men standing side by side, their bark covered in symbols that seemed to move and shift when you looked directly at them. And in the center of the clearing stood stones, massive standing stones arranged in a perfect circle, each one taller than Kale, each one carved with more of those strange, flowing symbols that hurt to look at for too long. "The Moonstone Grove," Kale said, and there was reverence in his voice. "One of the oldest sacred sites in existence. Some say it was here before the first wolves walked the earth." Lyria took a step toward it, and immediately the symbols on the nearest stone began to glow. Faint, at first, just a whisper of silver light. But as she moved closer, they blazed brighter, responding to her presence like they recognized her. "Lyria." Kale's hand caught her elbow. "Wait, we need to be careful." But she couldn't stop. Her feet carried her forward like they had a will of their own, pulling her into the circle of stones. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world changed. The air shimmered. The ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse with a heartbeat that wasn't hers. And the symbols, all of them, on every stone erupted into brilliant silver light that washed over her like a wave. Power surged through her body, so intense it drove her to her knees. But this wasn't the wild, uncontrolled power that had saved her from the hunting pack. This was focused, purposeful, ancient beyond comprehension. Images flooded her mind. Not memories, visions, prophecies. The history of her bloodline stretching back through generations she didn't know existed. She saw a woman who looked like her standing in this same circle 1,000 years ago, silver flames dancing in her palms as she spoke words that made the earth tremble. She saw battles fought and won, kingdoms rising and falling, power passing from mother to daughter through an unbroken line. She saw herself not as she was now, but as she would become. Standing tall and fearless, silver light blazing from every pore, her voice commanding armies, her will bending reality itself. And she saw something else, something that made her gasp and press her hands to her stomach. Life. 2 tiny sparks of life, nestled deep inside her womb, where everyone had said nothing could ever grow. Not 1 child, 2, twins, glowing with the same silver light that coursed through her veins. "Impossible," she whispered, but even as the word left her lips, she knew it was true. Could feel it now that she was paying attention, the presence of 2 small souls, connected to her, depending on her, growing stronger with every breath she took. The visions shifted, showing her the future. Her children, a boy and a girl, both with her silver light and something else, something powerful and terrifying and beautiful. They would grow to be leaders, protectors, the ones who would stand between the wolf packs and the darkness that threatened to consume them all. But there was danger too. She saw shadows gathering, enemies circling, people who would stop at nothing to destroy her children before they could fulfill their destiny. She saw betrayal and blood and fire. And she saw a choice, her choice: stand and fight, embrace this power and everything it meant, or run, hide, try to protect her children by keeping them secret and small and safe. The visions faded, leaving her gasping on her hands and knees in the center of the stone circle. Her whole body shook, overwhelmed by everything she'd seen, everything she now knew. Strong hands lifted her gently. Kale pulled her against his chest, his warmth anchoring her to reality. "What did you see?" His voice was urgent, worried. "Everything." She looked up at him, and she knew her eyes were glowing silver because his face was bathed in that otherworldly light. "I saw everything, Kale. Who I am. What I'm meant to be. And," her voice broke, "I'm pregnant. With twins. Children everyone said I could never have." His eyes widened. For a moment, he just stared at her, processing. Then something shifted in his expression, wonder mixed with fierce protectiveness. "The prophecy," he breathed. "The twins who will change everything. They'll try to kill them. Fear wrapped around her heart like ice. They'll try to kill me and my babies before they're even born. I saw it. Enemies. I don't even know yet, gathering to destroy us. No. Kale's voice turned hard as steel. I won't let that happen. No one will touch you or your children. I swear it. You can't promise that. Tears streamed down her face. You can't protect us from the whole world. Watch me. The absolute conviction in his voice should have been impossible to believe, but looking into his burning gold eyes, feeling the strength of his arms around her, Lyria found herself believing anyway. A sound shattered the moment the crack of a branch, deliberately broken. They both spun toward the edge of the grove. Figures emerged from the forest, dozens of them, wolves in human form, surrounding the stone circle, blocking every escape route. And at their head stood someone Lyria recognized. Her old alpha, the one who had cast her out, sentenced her to death. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood others pack elders, rival alphas, even some who wore the robes of moon priests. Step away from her, Alpha King Kale. The voice belonged to an ancient woman in silver robes, her eyes milky white with age but sharp with purpose. She is an abomination. The prophecy speaks of destruction, not salvation. Those twins she carries will overthrow every alpha, will bring chaos and ruin to our people. The prophecy speaks of balance, Kyle growled, his body shifting to place himself between Lyria and the gathered wolves, of power returning to those who were cast aside, of justice for the broken. Is that what you call it? Her old alpha stepped forward, contempt dripping from every word. She is barren, cursed, wrong, and now you tell us she carries children? Impossible children born of forbidden power? This only proves what we've always known. She must be destroyed before she dooms us all. The wolves began to close in, tightening the circle. Lyria felt Kale's muscles coil, preparing to fight, but there were too many. Even an Alpha King couldn't defeat these numbers. Unless... The silver light inside her stirred, responding to her fear, to her desperate need to protect the lives growing inside her. It rose through her body like a tide, filling every cell, blazing brighter than it ever had before. No! Her voice rang out clear and strong, layered with power that made the very stones around her hum in response. You will not touch my children. She stood, and the earth beneath her feet cracked. Silver flames erupted from her palms, not wild and chaotic like before, but controlled, purposeful, devastating in their beauty. The night turned to day as light poured from her, so bright the wolves had to shield their eyes. Trees bent away from her, their branches bowing like subjects before a queen. The standing stones blazed with symbols that hadn't glowed in 1,000 years, and the air itself seemed to kneel. Pressure dropping so suddenly, several wolves dropped to their knees involuntarily. You called me Barren, Lyria's voice echoed with the power of generations, of every woman in her bloodline who had stood in this grove before her. You called me cursed. You called me worthless and broken and wrong. The flames in her hands grew brighter, hotter, but you were the ones who were wrong. You saw power you couldn't control and called it curse. You saw strength in an omega and called it abomination. You saw the future and called it threat. The wolves stumbled back, fear replacing their earlier confidence. Even her old alpha looked uncertain now, his bravado crumbling in the face of her transformed presence. But I am done letting you define me. Lyria stepped forward, and where her feet touched the ground, silver flowers bloomed in the snow. I am done hiding. I am done running. I am the daughter of the moon's chosen bloodline. I carry twins who will reshape this world, and anyone. Her eyes swept across the gathered wolves, pinning each one with her blazing silver gaze. Anyone who tries to harm them will learn exactly why our ancestors were feared. The flames around her hands exploded outward, a shockwave of pure power that sent wolves flying, that cracked trees and shattered stones that weren't part of the sacred circle. When the light faded, every wolf except Kale was on the ground, groaning, defeated without a single drop of blood being spilled. Lyria stood in the center of it all, glowing like a star fallen to earth, her hand pressed protectively over her still flat stomach, where two impossible lives grew stronger with every passing moment. This was her awakening, her claiming of power, her refusal to be anyone's victim ever again. And as Kyle moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers, his presence solid and unwavering, Lyria finally understood what the visions had been trying to tell her. She wasn't broken. She had never been broken. She was becoming exactly who she was always meant to be.